As mentioned earlier, Unitarian Universalists have a wide array of beliefs, and the speakers at our Sunday services come from many traditions. Today, here to share his thoughts, is Mr. Larry Berry. Mr. Berry has been a member of this UU congregation since 2011. He grew up in Virginia and has lived in Kentucky for about the past 14 years. He has been married to Jacqueline for 31 years, round of applause, and has a daughter living in Japan, another round there, a son here in Bowling Green, and a stepson in Virginia. Larry graduated from, anyone like to take a guess where he graduated from? Virginia, close. Radford University. Now, let's not get that mixed up from Redford, please. Redford University, and spent the majority of his career in manufacturing on the supply chain side. He was working in automotive upon his retirement in 2019. Now, Larry and Jackie are certified organic farmers, for which this congregation is very grateful. And I think there's a pickup today, too. Larry is actually, as part of his talk today, introducing Black History Month today with his talk this morning. So I give you Mr. Larry Berry.
Thank you, Chuck. Growing up in the formerly segregated southern state of Virginia, an historical and familial perspective. The periods I'm going to cover today are my father's family and their attitudes towards race, approximately the 1930s to 1950s, how racial divide was part of my childhood, the 1960s and 1970s, and the changes that have occurred in the present day. And before I get started, I want to preface that 5 generations of my family were slaveholders from the late 1600s until it was abolished in 1863. From reading wills of my ancestors, slaves were passed down as inheritance. Also, Richmond, being the capital of the Confederacy and where I was born, was heavily steeped in its Civil War past, and this heavily influenced my family. My father was born in 1929 in Richmond, Virginia. My grandfather was the Assistant Secretary of Agriculture for Virginia. My grandmother was a nurse at the Medical College of Virginia, so both were college grads. But my father was basically raised by a live-in black maid. During holidays and special events, an all-black kitchen staff were hired to cook meals and serve guests in their home. This, I feel, was due to my grandfather's position and standing in the community, being in the South. My grandmother kept a black maid after my grandfather's death and continued hiring all black kitchen staff for holidays, mainly Thanksgiving and Christmas dinners, though money was tight after his death. I know that having a maid was commonplace during this time. It was still a system that kept whites and blacks separated economically. This is a picture of my dad at 10 years old with my grandfather, grandmother, aunt, and their maid on vacation. And notice the maid was in her working uniform while my dad's family were in their casual clothes. This is another picture of my dad and his maid on the Potomac River. And again, she had to wear her work clothes. Above is a road sign that we recently came across on our last trip to Virginia. I don't know if everybody can see this, regarding the Lovings arrest in 1958. Richard Loving was white and Mildred Jeter was black. They fell in love and in June 1958 were married in Washington, D.C. After returning to Central Point, Virginia, they were arrested for violating the state's laws against interracial marriage, which made it a felony for interracial couples to leave Virginia, marry, and resume residence in the state. Lovings were convicted in 1959. However, in 1967, the U.S. Supreme Court's landmark ruling in Loving versus Virginia overturned all laws prohibiting interracial marriage. I was born in 1958 in Richmond, Virginia, the same year the Lovings were arrested. That same year also saw the start of construction of Interstate 95 through the middle of Richmond that broke up several prominent black neighborhoods who have never recovered from their heyday. Jackson Ward, at one time called the Black Wall Street of America, was one of them. When I was young, my mother and father also had a black maid that we shared with my grandmother. Yet my mother, who was from Minnesota, never quite understood why we needed a maid, but she complied to keep the peace within the family. In 1962, we moved to Cortland, Virginia, a town of about 3,000 people, where we continued to have a black maid due to my dad's position as a manager with a local insurance company. After the 1954 Brown versus Board of Education decision to end segregation of public schools, the concept of massive resistance, headed by Senator Harry Byrd of Virginia, began to challenge that decision. My grandfather and Harry Byrd were associates, having worked together on agricultural projects. To comply with massive resistance, several school systems threatened to shut down in Virginia for a period of time. Prince Edward County and the city of Norfolk did just that. The county that Cortland resided in, Southampton County, to appease both sides, built many new and modern schools for the black communities. The thought was white students would want to go to these schools to achieve integration, and the county could avoid breaking the law. But that didn't happen, with white students either leaving for all-white private schools or refusing to go to school at all. A point of interest of Southampton County, where we lived from 1962 to 1964, is where the Nat Turner Rebellion occurred in 1831. It is also the birthplace of Dred Scott, a Supreme Court decision stating, "A slave having lived in a free state, Illinois and Wisconsin, and moving to a slave state, Missouri, had to go by the local jurisdiction's laws, thereby not getting his freedom." My dad, too, was a proponent of massive resistance and against the practice of building the newer schools. It so happened we moved back to Richmond, actually Henrico County, prior to me starting first grade in 1964. In 1968, we moved from Henrico County to Chesterfield County due to lower housing costs in Chesterfield and supposed better schools. And Virginia is a state where cities over 5,000 are independent from the county or counties the city is located in or near. In 1970, Judge Robert Marriage, a federal district judge, approved the annexation by the city of Richmond of several square miles of Chesterfield County, including where we lived, mainly because of recent white flight, since schools in Richmond were starting to integrate and they were losing their tax base. My parents joined several demonstrations to try to stop the annexation. They were against integration of the schools and paying higher taxes than Chesterfield, yet they would have received more services such as trash pickup and getting a public bus system had they just stayed in Richmond. In 1970, after our section of Chesterfield was legally annexed, Judge Marriage implemented busing of students across town to maintain balance in the integration of black schools. Though there were more demonstrations, I was bused in the 7th grade in September of 1970 to a formerly all-black school. However, my younger brothers and many of my friends from elementary school's parents chose to send them all to an all-white private schools. This separation, it kind of upset me due to losing touch with a lot of my old friends, yet I felt that integration was necessary, and eventually I made new friends. Here's a picture of the first day of school in Richmond in 1970. For the first several weeks of my 7th grade, busing logistics across town to the Maymont School was a challenge. First, I was picked up near my house in a yellow public school bus. The bus picked up mostly white students in the areas recently annexed, about a 30-minute ride. The bus then arrived at Thompson Middle School, where we then transferred to a city public transportation bus. From Thompson, we crossed the James River into the heart of Richmond proper, about another 30-minute ride. We then transferred again to another city bus and rode for about 10 more minutes until we arrived at Maymont School. Prior to busing, Maymont was an elementary school, but at the time was only 7th grade due to the increase of students in the two areas. So the total ride every day was between 70 and 90 minutes. But after late October, the last transfer was eliminated, and we just rode the one city bus from Thompson direct to Maymont. At Maymont, the ratio of white students to black students was 30-70, so it was easy to make many black friendships that made this transition easier for everyone. Also, the teachers did a great job keeping us focused on education. However, when I started 8th grade, I only rode the bus from near my house to Thompson Middle School, while the black students rode the city bus from their neighborhoods across the river to Thompson. This created more tension, with fighting in hallways and courtyards becoming a regular occurrence. I felt, too, the administration there didn't foster an environment that would have reduced the tension either. Again, the ratio was about the same in 8th and 9th grades, 30-70, and though tensions were high, I did maintain a lot of the friendships I had made back in 7th grade. And that's a picture of Thompson Middle School, where I attended in 8th and 9th grades, and in 7th grade, we did the bus transfer every day. In 1972, Judge Marriage's decision to integrate all the surrounding counties of Richmond was overturned by a higher court. This set back the integration movement and further enhanced white flight from Richmond to the surrounding counties, and to this day, Richmond schools are still less integrated. That same year, in the middle of my 9th grade, my parents moved out of the city and farther back into Chesterfield County, where I graduated in 1976 from a predominantly white public high school. After graduation, I went to college, graduated from Radford University in Southwest Virginia, and went into the working world in the early 80s. During this time, Richmond and Virginia had gone through many changes to separate from its segregated past, such as Richmond electing its first black mayor, Henry Marsh, in 1977, Virginia electing the first black governor, Doug Wilder, in 1990. Another change was the total integration of public universities. Prior to the late 60s and early 70s, black students were segregated on campus through either separate housing or off-campus housing. And today, Richmond currently has recently elected a popular black mayor, LeVar Stoney. But the really big change, and everybody probably knows, are the Richmond's removal of the Civil War statues from Monument Avenue, which I never thought would happen in my lifetime. This is a picture of the Robert E. Lee statue before its removal. This is a picture of me at the Robert E. Lee statue recently taken with now just the pedestal. And recently the pedestal has been removed too. This is a Stonewall Jackson memorial that was on Monument Avenue too. And that's its removal now. Took that picture from my car. This is a view of beautiful downtown Richmond I recently took from Hollywood Cemetery, where my parents and grandparents are buried. Hollywood Cemetery is also the burial place of Jefferson Davis, who was the president of the Confederacy. So we'll always be reminded of this history. In conclusion, though I acknowledge my ancestors' colonial history and grew up during the turbulent between times, I never felt part of the practice of segregation or quite understood the motives behind it. With the Civil War monuments coming down and recent court decisions against white supremacy, like the $26 million decision in Charlottesville, I'm more hopeful for a just and equitable future. We love going back to Richmond to see family and friends. It's a vibrant city with a rich and multicultural community. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Larry, for sharing with us your ideas and your journey and your experiences growing up as a young person into adulthood. As a part of our responsible search for truth and meaning, we encourage thoughtful discourse, and after the service, you're invited to join in discussion via Zoom or here at the church, possibly in the meditation garden between the buildings. This congregation and the work we do is supported by the voluntary generosity of all who contribute. The offering is a sacrament of the free church, and you may place your donation in the plates on the way out, or use the QR code on the screen, or donate via our website. As we enjoy the music, the offering will be given and received in grateful appreciation of our shared hopes and values. We thank you for your gifts, and may we use them wisely in the service of our congregation and within our community. And thank you, Forrest, again for such lovely music. The community has some news and announcements, and the only announcement I have right now is the newsletter deadline is this Sunday. And yes.
Actually, letter is not, the newsletter came out just this Friday, and the next one won't be due until the final Sunday of February.
Well, I stand corrected. Thank you very much for that corrected announcement. Thank you. Okay. And if you have other questions about Unitarian Universalism or about joining our congregation, please speak with a member of the membership team or our board president, Ms. Kruger, and you can also email her at president@uubgky.org. Also, you can find more community news by reading the monthly newsletter and the weekly email updates. You can also, if you're at the church, you can look at the bulletin boards and pick up a hard copy of the newsletter. But I think I heard this morning there is only one, there's no copies right now. All right. Also, we have a website and our Facebook are also available online. And at this time, our final hymn will be hymn number 298 in your gray hymnal. And we again are just going to hum one verse. And Forrest has asked if you have your songbook, the verse we would like you to look at is verse 4 as related to our talk today. This morning, Jackie Berry will be giving our final reading. We have A Calling in the World.
By Jean M. Rickard. We have a calling in this world. We are called to honor diversity, to respect differences with dignity, and to challenge those who would forbid it. We are people of a wide path. Let us be wide in affection and go our way in peace. Amen.
Thank you, Jackie. At this time, we will now bid farewell to all those who have joined us online. We hope you have found this service meaningful, and we invite you to join us again. Be well and go in peace.